It might have looked like a charmed rise to stardom, but the truth behind Steve McQueen's legacy began in shadows. What stuck with him from childhood wasn't fame or lights. It was the sharp memory of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, the kind of simple comfort that hinted at a life more turbulent than most imagined. Behind his steel blue gaze was a kid who had to fight for every scrap of peace. A man who counted not just his lines in scripts, but the seconds he was seen on screen, all because he couldn't bear to share the spotlight. And what drove that need? A bitter rivalry with a fellow Hollywood icon so intense, crews had to keep them apart between scenes. Fans assumed they were friends. The reality was far more combustible. Born on March 24, 1930 in Beech Grove, Indiana, McQueen's start in life was anything but secure. His father, a stunt pilot, vanished not long after he met Steve's mother, a troubled woman who struggled with her demons and never really found her footing. At just 3 years old, Steve was shuffled off to Missouri to live with his grandparents as the Great Depression tightened its grip on America. The only real stability he ever knew came from his great-uncle Claude's farm, where life was hard but steady. There, Steve received a simple red tricycle for his 4th birthday. It wasn't just a toy, it became a symbol of freedom, and his obsession with speed was born. Claude wasn't just family. He was the first man to treat Steve like a son. Before Steve turned 8, Claude gave him a gold pocket watch engraved with a message of love and pride. That watch became his talisman, something he never let go of, not even after the fame rolled in. But once Steve returned to his mother in Indianapolis, the world turned cold again. A persistent ear infection hampered his hearing, and undiagnosed dyslexia made reading a battle. School offered no refuge, neither did home. By age 9, Steve had been swept into a gang, scraping by on the streets, stealing what he could to survive. His mother bounced him from one stepfather to another, each more volatile than the last. One of them beat him so savagely after catching him stealing hubcaps that he hurled Steve down the stairs. But instead of crying, Steve locked eyes with him and whispered a chilling promise: "Lay a hand on me again, and I won't let it go unpunished." That day, fear stopped ruling him. The street kid hardened into something unbreakable. At 14, after being branded uncontrollable, he was sent to the Boys' Republic, a tough reform school in California. There, he found pain, isolation, and relentless punishment. He was thrown in solitary confinement 5 times. Yet strangely, the experience stuck. The school's hard-edged discipline taught him the value of effort. Nothing without labor wasn't just a motto. It became a seed of resilience in him. Decades later, after hitting it big, he poured money and time back into the school, returning regularly to encourage other lost boys trying to find their place. At 16, restless again, McQueen drifted to New York. But he didn't stay rooted for long. Soon, he was traveling with merchant marines, ending up in the Dominican Republic. He took odd jobs, worked briefly at a brothel, and eventually roamed the U.S. living hand to mouth, selling pens at fairs, cutting lumber in Canada, even landing a spot in jail after being arrested for vagrancy. He spent 30 days chained up in a prison work gang, and it etched a toughness into his character that no acting coach could teach. In 1947, at just 17, Steve had had enough. He convinced his mother to sign off on enlistment papers so he could join the Marines. Boot camp hit him like a storm, and while he excelled with machines, his rebellious streak caused trouble. He was demoted 7 times, once going missing for 2 weeks, just to be with a girlfriend. His punishment? A stint in military jail. But sitting in that cell, he finally realized his reckless choices were sinking his future. That clarity became his pivot point. During a harsh Arctic training exercise in 1950, McQueen saved 5 fellow Marines after their tank plunged into icy waters. For that, he was honored and assigned to the elite Presidential Yacht Guard. When he left the Marines later that year, he wasn't the same man. He had direction, purpose. And just 2 years later, with nothing but GI Bill money and $800 in his pocket, he enrolled in acting school in New York. Surrounded by future stars, Steve began rewriting his destiny. But Hollywood wasn't kind in the beginning. In 1958, Steve starred in The Blob, a low-budget sci-fi flick. He was offered a deal, $3,000 up front or a cut of the profits. He chose the check. The movie made millions. McQueen missed out on hundreds of thousands, a mistake that haunted him for years. Yet that same year he caught his break with Wanted, Dead or Alive. As bounty hunter Josh Randall, he turned a gritty show into a hit, appearing in nearly 100 episodes. That role gave him not only discipline, but presence. He kept pushing. A small appearance on Alfred Hitchcock Presents showed his range, and in a quiet scene in Human Interest Story, a young Clint Eastwood was seen in the background. It was the only time the two titans appeared on screen together. Another Hitchcock episode, Man from the South, brought him into a deadly wager involving a lighter, a finger, and Peter Lorre's chilling villainy. The tension was unbearable, and McQueen's casual final flick of the lighter made hearts skip. It didn't spark. The danger had been real. Before those big breaks, he'd clawed his way through forgettable TV dramas. The Big Story, Climax, West Point Story, even a courtroom drama with a young William Shatner. Every role, no matter how small, sharpened his edge. And then came 1960, The Magnificent Seven. He wasn't the lead, but he didn't need to be. Every time Yul Brynner delivered a line, McQueen found a way to steal focus, adjusting his hat, shifting his stance. It wasn't arrogance. It was survival. He never needed a flashy entrance. His screen presence alone turned heads. And with that motorcycle jump in The Great Escape, even though it wasn't him sailing over the barbed wire, but his stunt double and friend Bud Ekins, it didn't dull the thrill. In fact, knowing Steve did most of the riding himself, and even portrayed the German soldiers in chase scenes, only deepened the respect. When Johnny Carson praised the jump on The Tonight Show, McQueen simply smiled and said, "It wasn't me." That humility, rare in Hollywood, only made audiences love him more. He wasn't just the guy in leather jackets and fast cars. He was real, and people could feel it. That authenticity launched him far beyond American borders. His performance in The Great Escape earned him Best Actor at the Moscow International Film Festival, signaling his arrival as a global star. But he wasn't content sticking to one type of role. Later that same year, Love with the Proper Stranger showed a softer, riskier side. The film tackled taboo topics for 1963, an unexpected pregnancy, the tension of choices, emotional vulnerability. Paired with Natalie Wood, McQueen played a jazz musician swept into responsibility. Critics raved. He landed his first Golden Globe nomination, and Wood received her third Oscar nod. Off-screen, whispers swirled about their chemistry, but on-screen it was undeniable. This was McQueen proving he wasn't just a rebel. He could carry weight and heart. As 1965 rolled in, McQueen's poker face in The Cincinnati Kid became a defining image. Cool under pressure, unreadable, magnetic. Audiences ate it up, and the film cleared $7 million. But then he took a darker turn in Nevada Smith, portraying a mixed-race man bent on revenge. It wasn't just acting. McQueen poured himself into the role, even staging his own arrest to bring realism to the part. That kind of intensity showed Hollywood he wasn't just coasting on charm, he was chasing range. He wasn't afraid to get dirty, dig deep, and challenge what leading men were supposed to look like. By 1966, that hunger for something more led him to The Sand Pebbles, a sweeping epic set on a gunboat in 1920s China. It wasn't a shoot-'em-up. It was emotionally dense, politically charged, and eerily reflective of the Vietnam-era's tensions. The filming nearly broke him. The long shoots, the emotional weight, the pressure, it all left him drained. So drained, in fact, he stepped away from acting for an entire year. But the cost was worth it. 8 Academy Award nominations followed, including McQueen's one and only Oscar nod. That moment was the industry tipping its hat. He wasn't just the king of cool anymore, he was a serious actor. Then came Bullitt in 1968. If the Sand Pebbles proved he could act, Bullitt reminded the world he was still a cinematic adrenaline rush. That 10-minute car chase through San Francisco wasn't just action. It was a revolution. Raw, real, roaring. McQueen behind the wheel of a Mustang, chasing down a Charger through hairpin turns and narrow streets. He did about 10% of the driving, but it didn't matter. The grit was in every frame. No computer tricks, just speed, danger, and instinct. The chase set the gold standard, and film car scenes have been chasing that legacy ever since. That same year, McQueen flipped the script again with the Thomas Crown Affair. Gone was the gritty rebel. In his place stood a man of mystery and wealth, decked out in tailored suits and a $2,250 Patek Philippe watch. He didn't punch his way through problems. He outwitted them, seducing Faye Dunaway while plotting elegant heists. This wasn't just a role switch, it was a power play. McQueen served as an uncredited producer, pushed for a distinct visual flair, and showed Hollywood he could do elegance with as much flair as he did danger. In 1969, he charmed again in The Rivers, portraying a mischievous Southern man who steals a car for a whimsical road trip. Adapted from Faulkner's novel, it was lighter fare, but it added another layer to his portfolio. And it carried historic weight. Rupert Cross, his co-star, became the first black actor nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. McQueen, always the risk-taker, proved range didn't have to be loud to make a statement. In 1972, he made his defiant return in The Getaway. Directed by Sam Peckinpah, it was pure McQueen, gritty, tense, unstoppable. Instead of a paycheck, he gambled on 10% of the gross. It was a bold move. And it worked. The film made over $36 million and re-established him as a box office juggernaut. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a masterclass in resilience. He'd taken a punch, dusted off, and came back swinging. By 1974, with The Towering Inferno, McQueen reached a career pinnacle. He negotiated a deal that included $1 million up front and a percentage of profits, ultimately pulling in the equivalent of $76 million today. He wasn't just starring, he was shaping the business. He demanded equal screen time with Paul Newman and personally adjusted the script to level the playing field. The film was a financial behemoth. And yet, after the dust settled, McQueen vanished again. He stepped off the stage and into the wild. While the world clamored for more, he retreated in a motorhome filled with his beloved Indian motorcycles, racing incognito as Harvey Mushman. He didn't do it for show. These races, brutal ones like the Baja 1000, were in his blood. He'd been tearing up tracks since the early 60s and nearly took the 12 hours of Sebring Crown in 1970 with a broken foot. In 1978, the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame finally honored his unshakable devotion to racing. But beneath the engines and applause, there was a quieter side. One shaped by the Boys' Republic, a reform school that once gave him hope when the world had none. Even after he made it big, he kept giving back, secretly funneling the freebies in his contracts to the school, visiting the boys, sharing stories, playing pool. He didn't just remember where he came from, he honored it. Today, fans still gather for the Friends of Steve McQueen car and motorcycle show, walking among the very machines he loved. And in 2025, the tradition continues, a legacy built not only on speed and style, but on heart. Even as the years slipped by, Steve McQueen's spirit refused to fade. His legacy still pulses in Hollywood's veins, but behind the roar of engines and his sharp-edged cool, his private world was collapsing. His whirlwind romance with Ali McGraw, Hollywood's golden girl of the 70s, burned with a spark that could light up a city. It all began on the set of The Getaway in 1971. She saw him and swore his eyes held lightning. That spark pulled her away from her husband, producer Robert Evans. She married McQueen in 1973, ready for a love story she thought would last. But behind the flashbulbs and red carpets, there was something darker brewing. McQueen, a man shaped by abandonment and instability, brought shadows into their relationship. His affection turned possessive. He urged her to leave acting just when she'd exploded after Love Story. His paranoia grew louder, his drug use thicker. He strayed, yet expected her to remain loyal. When she lost their baby, shattered and bleeding inside, his emotional silence cut deeper than anything else. That silence ended it. They separated in 1977, divorced the next year. Yet Ali never remarried. She still called him the love of her life, proof that some heartbreaks never fully heal. Then came his unexpected return. But instead of the typical car chases and smirking cool, McQueen made a move no one saw coming. In 1976, he took on An Enemy of the People, a film built on dialogue, not dynamite. It wasn't commercial, it wasn't flashy, it was personal. He studied plays, built the set with his own hands, and dove deep into the soul of a serious role. Critics didn't show up, the box office didn't ring. But to McQueen, it was his quiet rebellion against the industry that tried to keep him in a box. He wasn't just chasing explosions, he was chasing respect. And while the world may have shrugged, McQueen stood tall in his own reflection. But shadows crept back in 1979. His health nosedived. Still, he fought through two final films, Tom Horn and The Hunter. The man who once scoffed at stunt doubles now watched others do what he loved most. In The Hunter, shot in Chicago, his cough wouldn't let up. He wheezed through scenes, needing help to get through the stunts. That shift wasn't just physical, it shattered the foundation of his identity. Yet he didn't walk away. He pushed until the film wrapped. In August 1980, The Hunter hit theaters. It would be his last screen moment, just 3 months before the lights went out for good. But the true fight had started years earlier. A stubborn cough began in 1978, and despite quitting smoking and trying every prescription, it lingered. Then came the crushing diagnosis, in December 1979, pleural mesothelioma. It was rare, aggressive, and irreversible. The likely cause? Asbestos exposure, dating back to his early days. By 1980, the disease was winning. Desperate to live, McQueen left the U.S. for Mexico, turning to controversial treatments that cost him $40,000 a month, nearly $150,000 today. Injections, enemas, latrial. The protocols were extreme, the doctor behind them disgraced. But hope can be louder than science. Even as tumors spread, he clung to it. What truly stunned those closest to him wasn't a final role or romance. It was the quiet surrender to faith. McQueen, the rebel of Hollywood, found solace in something beyond fame. Guided by his pilot and Barbara, he began attending church, opening up about his fears and searching for peace. When evangelist Billy Graham visited, McQueen confessed he'd lost his Bible. Graham handed him his own. Before his final surgery, McQueen asked him to pray. When Graham finished, he whispered, "He's ready to go." McQueen simply nodded. "I am ready." On November 7, 1980, Steve McQueen died in Juarez, Mexico. But his legend didn't. On screen, he was untouchable. Off camera, he wrestled constantly with the fear of being outshined. From high-speed stunts to headline-stealing feuds, Steve McQueen lived like a legend, and loved like a rebel. Hit like, drop your thoughts below, and subscribe, because Hollywood's truth is just getting started.